we've got some people up here who are absolutely excellent. Monisha, if I can invite you up, thanks. Um, as well as Martin Weiss from the Department of Defense. Matti, I think you're probably familiar with already, and Nakamura-san as well from NTT Docomo. So if you'd like to take a seat. Um, we've had a fantastic response online, a wide range of different questions. But as you can probably tell, we've got some real veterans from different parts of the telecoms industry and beyond here. So I'm hoping to make them earn their drinks this evening. Um, so please don't be shy about asking them some difficult questions and making them squirm on stage, because that's what I plan to do, thanks to the audience questions. Um, so just taking some of the material from online, there have been quite a few, but one of them I think is absolutely crucial, and that's 5G has been a slow burner. It's not yet fully adopted. I mean, there are some countries where it's very popular, some where it's not yet been deployed. But how much slower does that mean that 6G is likely to be in terms of its infrastructure deployment? And what are the implications then for how we develop 6G? I mean, does this mean, for example, that until, as some people have said, until we've learned the lessons from 5G, we can actually sit back, relax, take our time, and get things a bit more right this time? Or what are the implications, do you think? And I'll start out with Manisha. Thanks.
I'll give you my viewpoint as an academic who's been studying the real world performance of 5G for a few years now, actually, ever since millimeter wave 5G started being deployed in Chicago in 2020 during the pandemic, believe it or not. I think part of the reason for this, we have to ask ourselves, why has 5G been such a slow rollout? And I think part of the reason is that even though it can do a lot, there are all of these options that can be used in a lot of the vertical industries. What has been rolled out has really been the EMBB version, which is targeted at consumers. And as a consumer, it is not very clear as to what advantage you're getting out of 5G. So in that sense, perhaps one way to look at 6G is not focus so much on the tried and true, well-known use cases, but actually try some of the extreme use cases first. But I am not responsible for profit and loss bottom lines of companies, but just speaking as an observer and whatever we've done, the way we did 5G, at least in the US, with the non-standalone and what was terribly called dynamic spectrum sharing, or DSS, within 5G, which was, in my opinion, a disaster. And then standalone, which hasn't yet come, which may actually deliver all the promise of 5G. I don't know whether we should move straight to a full-fledged version of 6G whenever it's ready, rather than go through the staging process. But understanding why it's been slow is probably the first step.
Yeah, that's fair enough. And Nakamura-san, perhaps I can get you to comment on this as well. In terms of, NTT Docomo tends to be one of the faster moving telcos out there in terms of technology adoption. But when it comes to 6G, do you anticipate it moving, for example, at the speed that we saw 5G moving from sort of basic concepts through to actual deployments? And if we do have a slower rollout, does that have implications in terms of the infrastructure? I mean, do we even want to have new infrastructure in 6G?
Yeah, first of all, as I mentioned in the session before the lunch break, the success of the 5G is essential for the success of the 6G. And also, in other words, if we can deploy the 5G successfully, and if we can provide the 5G services and monetize successfully, maybe 6G can deploy very smoothly based on the 5G facilities and 5G network services. Yes. So I really want to I'm keen to have a success in the 5G network and the 5G services so that, yeah, we can smoothly introduce the 6G. That's my hope, and I'm making a great effort for that. Yes. That can be answered to your questions.
Thanks. Yeah, Matti.
I think this question is a little bit absurd because we don't know even yet what are the 6G requirements. So hard to say really. So if it's really ambitious goals, we may end up having a little bit delay. If they are, let's say, more evolutionary from 5G advanced, piece of cake probably, hopefully. So anything in between. But more than that, it really depends on the global economical situation, how much different parties are willing and able to invest.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we've been pushing experiments in 5G internally, and it's been a challenge, but we've been very excited about it. I mean, I think 5G standalone is something that we're very interested in, and we've seen a lot of successes in it. Now, I agree with Matti that we don't know what 6G is, so the answer is it depends. So.
Yeah, but related to that, I suppose, there's a question that's come in. You may also find this absurd, but I think it's fascinating that given the lack of maturity in 5G currently, I mean, we're getting on for halfway through the decade now, and particularly a lack of wider deployment of 5G standalone technologies using open access networks and devices ecosystem. The question is, should operators maybe skip 5G advanced altogether? I mean, if we're looking at just getting what's currently out there right, then perhaps there's an argument for not using a phased approach, going through the 5G advanced and implementation there through to 6G, but maybe taking a leap of faith. That sounds kind of scary, but it's an interesting idea that's come through on the questions, and I'd be interested to hear your thoughts on this.
Well, I mean, go ahead. So I think it really depends on local conditions, right? I mean, what's the demand? What's the demand for the capabilities that a prototypical 6G might offer? If there's no demand for it, then shouldn't roll it out. If there's no demand for the 5G advanced services, then skip to 6G. I mean, I think this is a highly local operator level decision.
Yeah, I think it's a bit similar. If you need to buy a new car, you don't want to wait that the dream car is available 5-6 years from now. You buy it now if you need it. Mm-hmm. So if there's need to offer services for people in different parts of the world, they will do it, whatever is available. And then it's only a cost factor, how much they are able to invest in it. Mm-hmm. And that's it.
Mm-hmm.
I think it goes back to what are the new use cases. So far, I think 5G has been slow because there really hasn't been, other than fixed wireless access, which wasn't even one of the use cases that people spoke about when 5G was being designed at all. So there's excess bandwidth now because 5G has been over-provisioned, and so it's being used for fixed wireless, right? 5G advanced, are there use cases today that would really benefit from 5G advanced? If there are, then 5G, you don't wait for 6G, you do 5G advanced because we don't know what 6G is. Maybe 6G is 5G advanced plus, maybe it's evolutionary, maybe it's revolutionary. It's really hard to say. But I think the industry should really focus a lot more on rolling out some of the unique features of 5G, which was URLLC. It's not available anywhere. There's only so much you can do with the MBB, honestly.
Fair point.
My assumption is the 6G will be developed based on the 5G system, 5G advanced system. In that sense, the phased approach should be more likely to be realized, I think. So, and also maybe most of the operators think that the smooth migration from the 5G to 6G with the reasonable cost is preferable, of course. So if we can have a very, very excellent services in the 6G, or if we can have a big gain in the 6G, maybe we can consider some kind of drastic changes from the 5G to 6G without any phased approach. But at this moment, I don't see that such kind of the drastic gain in the 6G so far. So we should better to think about the smooth migration from the 5G Advanced and 6G. That's current my thinking.
Yeah, I imagine there are people from the NGMN in the audience who would be cheering at that. Having said that, maybe we should be thinking slightly differently about what 6G is or could be or so on. And the question has come in, which I think we've touched upon already today. Should we think about 6G as being a public network like we've had in the past? Or should we look at it as being something more focused? So for example, some people have been talking about 6G as being, in a perfect world, software-based upgrades from 5G. In that case, maybe we should be thinking about it as something which is going to be much more suitable just occasionally where you need it, or as and when, or something potentially that's much more suitable for specific environments, whether that's sort of businesses or small networks or that kind of thing. I mean, when you're thinking about 6G and so on, do you have a standpoint as to what it is or should be in that sense? And you know, how does that affect the way that then you're developing your own strategies? And maybe Martin, I can ask you first about this.
Yeah, so I thought about this question quite a bit. I mean, so when I've been listening to the panel, to the various panels that we've had, and they've all been very interesting, but I keep on seeing a very hierarchical, centralized approach to this. And maybe the audacious thing is to not do that, right? To do something that's more localized, more distributed. I'm sure the carriers, the balance sheet of the carriers would love the local software upgrade approach that you're saying. I think for end users that could be attractive as well because it would minimize disruptions. You know, for me, I think it's one of the promises of Open RAN too, because now you're not you have a lot more control about what you're upgrading, how you're upgrading it, when you're upgrading it. So for our applications, we're kind of enthusiastic about that.
Thanks. Yeah, Matti.
So when we look at the developments already during the past 10 years or so, we have been developing technologies to such a direction that they are best suitable for rather short coverage areas. 4G was really great for macrocellular mobile broadband. The question is, do we need yet another fantastic macrocellular mobile broadband solution? I'm not sure if we need that. Then we look at the other development. Where is the Wi-Fi world going right at the moment? Wi-Fi 7 is there with very similar capabilities as 5G has. Again, the question, do we need 5G for situations where Wi-Fi 7 would do the job? Wi-Fi 8 is being planned at the moment, and we are talking about 6G. Are they going to be, again, very similar? So where's the room and need for 6G? That is a good and critical question. And like it was said in several times today, that there's no G without new spectrum.
Mhm.
Spectrum is the key. If there is no new spectrum for 6G, we are all wasting our time here.
Thanks.
Yep. Clearly, the public network is needed continuously, and we need to provide stable services for the many of the consumer users. Yes. So in that sense, public network is definitely needed. But on the other hand, the private network needs demand will be increased, and that private network need to be optimized for the specific use cases. Such kind of the demand will be increased. So in the 6 era, public network and private network use for the specific use cases, both would be important and yes, increased.
Great.
Yeah, just to add on, I think it's also important to ask ourselves the question is, clearly the demand on data will increase, so we'll need more bandwidth, but does needing more bandwidth equate to needing a new G? So, for example, today 5G improves over 4G in throughput, but does it come mostly from the increase in bandwidth, or is there something fundamental about the technology improvements that were put in that creates the improved throughput? Some of the early measurement work that we've done seems to indicate that it's really the bandwidth that is giving you the biggest bang for the buck. If that's the case, then I think maybe we focus on trying to get more bandwidth into play for our cellular networks and focus less on creating a new G just for the sake of using this new bandwidth. So can we take 5G advanced and use it in new bandwidth, or does it have to be totally new infrastructure, totally new devices? I mean, what do we, so the end-to-end system gain of doing these constant Gs, I think we have to look at it more judiciously.
But Monisha, isn't that just the question of how we name it? Now we talk about release this and that.
Right.
It doesn't matter. We can call it release whatever, but it's anyways new standard version that we will need.
It's a new standard version, and the more, I mean, maybe there is something to be learned from how Wi-Fi makes things backward compatible, where you don't rip out everything all at once to sustain a new system. Yes, there's a little bit of efficiency in there, but so when we went from 3G to 4G, it was such a drastic change in the physical layer, right? You were changing a whole lot of things, and it was clear that you needed new things. From 4G to 5G, we added a few things in it. And if we can and we don't know what 6G is, but if 6G is still going to be OFDM, if it's still going to be some version of massive MIMO, and if it's just going to be larger bandwidth, can we figure out a way to make this in a way that you can reuse infrastructure? This is what I'm trying to say. Or maybe not. Maybe there's a great new physical layer technique waiting to be discovered for 6G.
Maybe the most critical thing is that the core network should remain the same and stable.
Core, yes.
Right.
That's the other thing.
Well, but most of the cost is in the edge, not in the core. So not having to replace radios is where you save most of your money. I did want to respond also to Wi-Fi. I mean, there are lots of good use cases for Wi-Fi, but we've found, for example, in warehouses, these kinds of situations, Wi-Fi just doesn't do it because the handover problems are just not solved. The 5G works so much better. Private indoor 5G, and I think that's a frontier worth exploring.
Yeah, and that actually is a good move into another question that we've had from the audience, sort of looking again at these sort of distributed architectures and that kind of thing. We've had a question in talking about from somebody driven by the disruption of industry, and talking about architectures and use cases that are immersive, creating real-time work sessions between remote individuals with, well, they talk about doing business using Bitcoin, and widespread storage of ideas or knowledge to prevent theft, which sounds to me again like a sort of distributed data or knowledge infrastructure. So this all demands protection beyond what we've got today. We've talked a lot so far today about resilience, much more than I perhaps expected to. But to what extent does this kind of protection in 6G either need to be a native thing, or how much is it being currently addressed in your work? And this is perhaps something that goes to the root of what Tom was talking about earlier. So Martin, maybe I can get you to comment.
Yeah, I mean, for us, it starts with zero trust architecture. You know, I mean, when that's just kind of a fundamental tenet. Without that, it's going to be hard to gain any kinds of security-oriented resilience. Beyond that, it kind of depends on what the architecture turns out to be.
For you, Nakamura-san, if we're looking at something much more distributed and much more protected, can you reconcile those two?
Yeah, there's such kind of topics. So already the very important issues, and then we need to address even for now. And that is not so specific for the G.
Mm-hmm.
So and also I discussed with their cybersecurity expert, and they already providing the excellent solutions to protect our stable network services. And we should deploy such kind of solutions, and we should deploy the excellent solutions continuously, yes, regardless of the G. Yes, that's a very important point. And I know that 3GPP also are developing the security specifications in the SA3, but that is only in the 3GPP system. But we need to provide the secure and protected services end-to-end manner, and how to provide such kind of the secure connection and the secure services. So we need to have a more something other solutions than the 3GPP solutions. So that is my my question: how to have a perfect protected solutions continuously. Yes, so that could be a very significant issues for the operator's point of view, of course. Yeah.
The more features and the more customization we introduce to future solutions, the number of risk vectors is exponentially increasing. And that is really scary also. So the security is becoming more and more challenging in the future, that's for sure. Having all these developments of open RAN type of platforms, if not designed properly all the way through the products in the end of the day, may lead to kind of a chaotic situation. And there might be some wormholes left, whatever we do, that will enable quite a bit of problems. And the fact is that we rely more and more on mobile communication technologies in all fields of society and personal lives. So it is really a big issue. And should it be built-in feature? Absolutely, but we still are far away from guaranteeing that it's absolutely 100% secure.
Right.
But what is happening right at the moment? People are saying that mobile networks are much more safer than public internet, proper internet. So we have hope, of course, in that respect.
I mean, oh, sorry, Manisha.
I mean, this is not my area of expertise, but I'll just point out that recently in the US, a major carrier had a huge outage based on some software update that went wrong, and then they sent everybody to Wi-Fi. So I think the key to resilience is to recognize that you need redundancy. Maybe that's coming from another cellular network. Maybe that's coming from a totally different kind of network like Wi-Fi. So understanding the space where cellular is unique, I feel is really important. I feel cellular is trying to do a lot of things that Wi-Fi does better, instead of focusing on what its unique niches, which is the ubiquity, connectivity wherever you are, quality of service, and security. And leave the indoor space and the AR, VR, which most people are doing indoors, to a network that does that piece better. Wi-Fi doesn't try to do mobility, right? So I think maybe there's a little bit of shift in focus on not trying to do everything, but trying to focus on your uniqueness and doing that better.
There is a corollary to this, I suppose, which is, particularly if we are looking at some very different forms of networking than we're used to, with something more distributed, something more open, and so on. This is involving technologies which have been sort of typically outside of the telco zone of comfort as well. And, while I think there could be arguments as to, how well we've done security in previous generations of telecoms networks, it does seem as though there's this strange liminal zone now in between something that's fully sort of software and internet, and something that's a telco network like we knew in the past. So does this change the risk profile? Do we understand even the right kinds of questions to be asking in terms of how to make this secure? Or are we having the right kinds of conversations in your view?
So I'm going to use this as an opportunity to respond about the openness. I mean, I think open networks, they do complicate things. You're totally right, but they also give visibility so that you can address topics as they come up. To me, it's largely a question of, the reason why we've had these integrated systems in the first place is because the transaction costs of manufacturing have been decreased, right? I mean, that's sort of a classic institutional economics approach to the problem. And I think we're getting to a point where that's no longer necessary, right? Where we can manage risks between manufacturers, we can manage supply chain risks and so forth in different ways. So we no longer need to integrate in that way, and we can have a lot of innovation in the components, just as we've seen in PCs before us and other areas. Now that doesn't address the security question directly, but at the same time, if you allow local optimization and you have visibility into what's happening, you might have a better chance of addressing issues than if you don't know about it, or if you leave it to a group of experts from an integrated services company.
Thanks. Okay. I am going to, well, I've got plenty more questions actually from the online audience. So I will keep asking these unless somebody puts their hands up here. Because as I say, I don't feel like I've made these people squirm enough. I believe I see Joseph. Yeah. Here. Let me give you the microphone.
Thanks, Alex. The first comment I have, you talked about that open systems are secure. You followed what happened 3 days ago with XV and open source, where a foreign agency planted some code over years into software.
Right.
So, but that is not that's simply the question of security. But how would you see an architecture, how we can actually make things happening at the edge so that it doesn't rely on the back-end system, which we definitely need for whatever operations?
Yeah. So my bias is always towards bottom-up solutions to problems, local coordination where you can. Now, you're always going to have some degree of coordination that's necessary, and it may move up a hierarchy. So you're never going to get rid of the back end entirely, right? I mean, you have to have, I mean, well, I guess I should back up. You have to have some sense of what the scope of the system is that you're talking about, right? Because there's some things that you can solve totally locally, and sometimes you need to have coordination across systems. I think the key is to build those coordination mechanisms in, preferably in a way that isn't necessarily top down. I think the key to at least local resilience may also be not overly relying on centralized systems, right? So you can have local autonomy when things don't fail. And regarding your first point, I mean, certainly with open source software, there's the opportunity for code poisoning. We were concerned about the same thing with the AI training data, right? So one of the projects that we're looking forward to is building a trusted repository open source reference model for at least for our government use, which, you know, will hopefully not have these things in it. Are you going to catch everything? No. Here you have to rely on the community to audit the code as it goes along. It's not always perfect, as you pointed out.
But just to add, open systems doesn't necessarily mean open source, right?
That's right. Yeah.
I mean, you can have open interface, openly defined interfaces, and you could still not, I mean, I'm not a software expert, but running a entire public network on open source software seems a bit risky to me. But an open RAN architecture is different.
That's fair. Thank you. Now, I'm going to give a few seconds for somebody else in the audience to put their hand up before I dive into a completely different topic here, thanks to the online team. Brilliant. Okay. We've had quite a few questions around the topic of AI, and I know in the next couple of days we're going to hit upon that in a couple of different ways. But I thought that there was one which is quite fascinating, which is looking at AI and AI as a service. And this is asking what kind of services or capabilities can a 6G network provide to AI? So rather than looking at it from how do we use AI in our next generation of networks, are there things that we can do maybe above and beyond the current sort of APIs that the GSMA has launched with Camara that can offer value here? Matty.
So it's a two-way road. So we can use AI to optimize whatever network capabilities. But then if you look at the nature of mobile networks, we have mobility, they are distributed, they are deployed in different types of settings. We have users in the network. So we have lots of collection points of real world data. And we can use that data if we wish in really smart ways in the future to come up with totally new types of applications, automated in the network that no one can even imagine today. So we have access to real world, real-time data. And that's really powerful. And we can do all sorts of things in the future using that. That's really breaking the whole thing to something totally new that we don't even understand yet what it's capable of. It will be quite amazing.
I mean, go ahead.
Can I push back a little bit on that?
Please do.
So why can't we do that with 5G today?
It's not dependent on mobile technology itself. It's just what we define for the release X in the future. What do we want to do with that? How do we collect the data? Where do we process the data? How do we distribute the processed data? And we didn't have AI capabilities in previous generations. It's just coming in. 5G Advanced will have quite a bit of those. So you are right. We don't necessarily need 6G, but I see 6G as 2030 landmark. What do we have at that time frame available, whatever the G is? But 5 years from now, it's probably more than enough to have lots of new types of applications empowered by distributed networking, collecting data and use it in a really interesting ways by using AI in the future.
I mean, I tend to agree. I mean, when I saw that question, I had one word and it was data, you know, and but I would supplement that to say it's not just the data. It needs to be, you need to have appropriate metadata so you can interpret it properly. It may need to have, I don't know, if you have a supervised learning algorithm, you may need to have a human intervention to do appropriate tagging. So just the data produced by itself isn't enough. I think there's going to be a fairly substantial back end so that you can use the data appropriately and also to vet it for reliability and to avoid the kind of data poisoning attacks that we might be concerned with.
Yeah, AI is used for everything, actually, not only for our customer services, but also for our network operation, and also, yes, as Peter Betterson explained, and for the improvement of the radio systems. So maybe towards the 60, we will use AI more for all of the aspects, yes. So, and especially for the services for our customers, yes, as I mentioned in the morning session, we have mobile operators have a very big data based on our customers and also our network systems. So we can use such kind of the huge big data for our excellent services in the future more. Yeah.
So thank you. We have a question just over this side. If you have hang on a second, then there's microphone coming to you.
A question related to whether we are suffering from illusion of grandeur here, that when we are tying everything to these cellular networks, we have the AI cloud and everything is tied together by 6G. We don't hear that kind of talk from the Wi-Fi or IEEE communities maybe. So are we just a bit pipe, cellular bit pipe, where the biggest thing is a handover, and in that sense similar to Wi-Fi, or are we a bigger monolith with the society transforming capabilities?
That's a really good question, but it strikes to the heart of another question really, which is, should we even be considering 6G as a cellular technology? I mean, if people have been talking about a network of networks, if we're looking at that across a multitude of different access networks, then maybe we should be, again, sort of driving this concept of what 6G is further back and talking about some kind of fundamental architecture there.
I think this is like comparing apples to oranges. When you see the Wi-Fi product itself, it's very small, tiny, light, doesn't have lots of computational capabilities. When you see any base station gap in, you open it, there's a rack of lots of servers, lots of this, lots of that. So it's really hardware intensive, lots of software. It's a monster compared to Wi-Fi. So it's for different purpose, But what has been touched here also in this session is that should 6G or 5G evolutions be developed to such purposes where Wi-Fi would be clearly better solution? It exists, it's cheap, we can use it. So why should 6G be pushed to that direction? That is really a relevant point, and everybody should probably understand that there's absolutely no point in doing that.
That's a fair point. Nakamura-san, I wonder if I can get you to comment, because I know NTT's been part of the ION Global Forum project, and some of the work there in a photonic network seems to be actually sort of quite a radical change as well. And so maybe you can talk a little bit about that and how that relates to some of these topics that we've been covering here, for example, such as AI, and the impact that you think that might have.
AI? Sorry, could you repeat what the point of your question?
Yeah, could you maybe explain a little bit about the ION program with the all-photonic networks and how that might have an impact on some of these things that we've been talking about here.
Yeah, ION concept is, yes, one of the topics is advanced optical technologies use for the much lower latency for the end-to-end connection, and also drastic reduction of the energy consumption. Yeah. And also another topic is computing platform. And we will have a more excellent services for the name of the digital twin services and the metaverse or blah, blah, blah. So computing resources will be more needed. So how to accommodate such kind of computing resources in our network more efficiently? Maybe that could be a very important point to consider the future our network. Yeah. So we need to have new technologies for the computing resources to have a computing resources in our network. So we are studying such kind of things in the ION Global Forum, if my memory is correct.
Great, thank you. Now, again, I've got some more AI-related questions.
But Alex, can I respond? I mean, I agree. You know, I find that an intriguing question. Is this hubris or not on our part to be thinking about 6G, especially given where we stand? Tom often reminds me that this is not the office that I work for is not the 6G office, it's the future G office, right? It's 6G is maybe one of those, we'll see. But I think the opportunity is to think about what is the range of possibilities that we have available to us today, or we think we're going to have available to us in the future. To me, I'm really I think one of the important things is to allow room for innovation in use. You know, and to me that, you know, maybe growing up during the internet boom, I'm really attracted to the notion of edge-oriented service provision rather than centrally controlled service provision. Some of you are old enough to remember the so-called intelligent network and how that worked out. At least maybe that was a US phenomenon. It didn't work out well because it was centrally designed service provision. And so how can we get the kind of an innovative ecosystem to produce the new kinds of mobile applications that we can't even dream of? I mean, I've been in a number of ideation sessions where you get a group of engineers and say, well, what do you think is going to be the important thing for 5G or 6G? And I keep on saying, I have no idea, because it's not my skin in the game, right? I'm not facing those kinds of trade-offs. And I think we have to get the opportunities to the people who have skin in the game, who are doing that innovation at the edge. So anyway, my 2 cents. Sorry about that, Alex.
Yeah, no, just to add on to what you said, and this again, you know, going by the Spectrum panel is really, I think we should kind of try to dissociate the technology from the spectrum, from the band and the use. I mean, fundamentally, cellular technologies have an edge over unlicensed technologies because they're centrally managed, right? At the same time, they have limitations because they're centrally managed. And understanding what kind of frequency, what kind of use case fits each of these the best is what I think we need to focus in more on, rather than just, you know, just doing 6G for the sake of doing 6G. Again, as a technology, 5G really put in a lot of options that can really help in many, many cases. Unfortunately, 90% of those are not being implemented in MNO deployed networks today because they have one use case in mind, right? How do we change that paradigm going forward? And that is what I think is more important than trying to just add on things just to call it a new G. I think there's a question back there.
Fantastic, thanks. Gerhard, I see you've got a question. We've got the microphone coming to you there.
So if I put my consumer hat on, I think there's a lot of customers and small business owners that would rather never set up another Wi-Fi network or use another Wi-Fi network again. And they want a curated experience. And so the question is, I mean, is that what maybe 6G should drive towards, is the curated experience for the customer to just be able to use the technology and not have to worry about what it is that needs to be set up, et cetera. Regardless of whether we're talking about a macro station, we're talking about something within the business, within the factory, within the home.
Right. So, I mean, I'm sorry if I'm monopolizing things here. So that's a great question, and I think there's two factors to that. One is price, how much you're going to charge for it compared to what a Wi-Fi base station is, and that kind of gets into the affordability piece. The other part is a bit more insidious in that these Wi-Fi interfaces are built into everything we have, and we don't have 5G interfaces built into everything we have. So you're not going to get away from it, not in the near term. The second part of it is that, you know, at least in DoD, we often have to set up 5G networks in places where there aren't any. And they're set up by people who aren't, they're going to be set up by people who aren't specialists in the area. It's something we call zero touch. You know, we would like, you know, a soldier who has really other things to worry about than setting up a 5G base station to be able to turn one on and you get 5G service. How do you get there? I don't know. I mean, these are the research problems, but it kind of gets to the same point that you just raised, is that, you know, somebody who's running a machine shop is not a Wi-Fi expert. They don't want to be a Wi-Fi expert, but they find somebody in the office who, either their teenage son or whatever, somebody becomes the Wi-Fi expert in the office. I mean, this was true in the early days of the PC too. Every office had somebody who kind of inherited the job of being the guru. Anyway, sorry.
Yeah, I think CBRS is getting there. We've we have an experimental CBRS network. It was literally plug and play. It was a base station that came in a suitcase. I plugged it into Ethernet. I plugged it into power, waited for a while for it to contact the SAS, and boom, up and running. I had a 5G network in my home. So it is getting there. And the reason we got there was because you had spectrum like CBRS to provide a business case to develop a solution like that. And so that is where, again, you know, I think the question between having spectrum, innovation, making 5G or future 6G become much more of a consumer-facing technology is, I think, one of the things that we should seriously look at. How do we make it so that an average person does not have this cost barrier into doing something like that? And those are the ways we change the conversation around, you know, cellular and Wi-Fi.
Yep, there's a certain irony there, I think, in so far as I hear from people quite frequently who are excited at the thought of trying to make cellular telecoms as easy as Wi-Fi, and particularly if that's sort of putting it into an enterprise scenario or that kind of thing. So trying to sort of make Wi-Fi as easy as cellular, I think is a strange concept there, but it does come back to a point that a number of people have raised today about this idea of a human-centric innovation. And I wonder to what extent we are or should be focusing on that usability aspect, sort of as much as some of the other KPIs and other values that we're looking at. And I wonder, to Nakamura-san, obviously you've got within NTT Docomo, so actual customers to test out some of these ideas and so on. So how important is that usability for them?
Yeah. At the very beginning of the 6G study in Docomo, we tried to develop the 6G system integrating all of the access technologies. Yes, including Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, and the optical fiber. All of the access technologies need to be integrated as a 6G whole network. But I know that that will be very complicated. Yes. So, but the reality, we are providing of course cellular services as well as Wi-Fi services. So maybe it is reasonable to provide appropriate access services for our customers. Sometimes Wi-Fi, sometimes cellular. Maybe both solutions could be used appropriately. Even in the 6G era, maybe such kind of situation will not be changed drastically. But I hope that we can provide nice solutions to avoid any stress for our customers to switching the access technologies. Currently, even for now, the users take care about connect to the Wi-Fi, connect to the cellular system. Such kind of the stress need to be avoided in the future, but a little bit complicated, but we should try, I think. Yeah.
Well, I think that now that we have been talking about AI and we will be hearing more of AI will solve that problem, the usability problem in the future. Absolutely. The algorithms are able to optimize on the fly and they sense the environment. They are really smart. You would be messing around if you touch it.
Fair enough. Thank you. Now, I am aware that we've got a couple of minutes left. I want to start off by thanking everybody on the panel here and also you all as well in the room. Important pieces of housekeeping to notice. When we finish here today, there are going to be drinks just outside. And then at 8 o'clock, please do join us for the banquet here. I understand it's going to be a traditional Finnish three-course banquet, and that is going to be from 8 o'clock in the Panorama Hotel in the restaurant. Apparently, you go up the stairs from the bar, and you'll find it there. So with that, I'd like to extend a big round of applause to all our panelists and for you in the audience. And we'll look forward to seeing you again tomorrow at